Hey, Kyle. Sorry to hear about your health woes, man.
Oh, that's okay. I took time off and might have written some code.
I saw that.
You're live.
It's,
You want to do the
very
intro?
exciting.
So, welcome to the IPython decision-making meeting for Monday, September 22nd. We have these meetings anytime we get more than around 3 pull requests that we need to make a decision on. And these meetings are capped at a half an hour. And we start with the oldest needs decision tagged pull request. Looking from our current list, that's 6051, interact on demand option.
From the conversation, it seems like we want to do this. There's just
The naming.
Naming.
yeah. Oh, Chronitis had a nice proposal using shuffle on the words, the dictionary on the system, just to give it a random name.
The idea is that we would have a separate version of interact that rather than updating on every browser event, only updates when a user clicks a button. And the question is, what is the name of that new function? We have interact no auto, interact on request, interact manual, interact selective, interact not live, interact choose, and I'm sure there's others here as well. And I think it's just we have to decide on a name.
Yeah.
Manual seems okay.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah, it's the right concept for sure.
Yeah, it's an ideal name. It's obvious what it does from the name, but a second level of good enough means that once you use it one time, you at least know what it is. You at least remember it once you've done it once.
Yeah.
And I think it's a sufficiently detailed activity that I'm not sure you're going to get to that first level. So I don't know. I'm fine with manual.
Yeah.
Is anybody not fine with manual?
Let's think about if you described what it does. You would say it's like interact, but you have to push a button to get it to update.
Interact with a button?
Interact, no auto, interact. I mean, what I find confusing about manual is that, in a sense, they're all manual. In all of them, you interact and you drag things manually. It's whether the refresh and the event handling is automatic or is buffered, and you have to trigger it manually. And
yeah.
I don't know how to convey that without a mouthful.
Delayed?
No, there's no delay.
It's not exactly a delay, because if you simply sit there and wait, the delay is forever. Because it does really require manual interaction to trigger. I mean, yeah, manual is not terrible.
I mean, you're sort of also batching those updates.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not sure that's better than manual, though.
Interact queued.
But all of those have, the queued and batched, they have some kind of, like the difference is that you pick when the updates happen.
Yeah, from the user's perspective, it's a choose your own interact.
Yeah.
Yeah, the difference is the button.
It's the fact that there's buffering and manual flushing of the buffer versus an implicit buffer that is automatically flushed. So it's like print, where you call sys.standardout.flush yourself.
Yeah.
So, but interact manual flush, we might as well call it toilet.
Yeah. Yeah, and flush is not something that I don't think that's a word.
No, that's a very low level. It's a very low level API-ish term. I mean, manual. It's not the worst, and I mean, I can't remember. I think it was Min who said that it's something that you will remember once you do it. Like, oh, this is the one where I have to manually click on something to make it happen.
Yeah.
People will probably remember that pretty quickly.
Yeah. I think I'm fine with it. I mean,
Anyone else?
It's
Nope.
manual or demand, right? And demand doesn't
Yeah,
really make
on demand
sense.
was the original proposal.
Yeah.
well, but I think on demand to me can be interpreted two different ways.
Yeah, it can be interpreted the opposite way.
Yeah, like I would almost say my first interpretation would be the existing one is the one that does it on demand.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Whenever an event happens, it requires an update. It does it automatically, and on demand is very much I totally agree with Brandon. Can be very much interpreted as when a request arrives, it does it, and so which is the opposite. I mean, honestly, I think here we have a long mouthful, which is basically something with a buffer that requires manual flushing, and that mouthful is not going to be captured by any short term. So we might as well go with something easy enough to remember once you've learned it, even if it's not completely obvious from a single word. And manual is easy to remember, and once you've seen it, you'll know what it does. So I would go with manual.
Okay, great.
Okay, sounds good.
I'll put a
Decision
note
made.
down.
Manual.
And does this need further review before it's merged?
I don't know. I think it might.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll remove the needs
I
decision
don't. It probably
tag.
doesn't need too much. But
Okay, but we,
mainly it's renaming choose to manual, probably.
okay, needs final review. All right, we're done with that one. Let's move on. So next one is Docker file for the example notebooks.
So I actually almost wanted to say no to my own PR here earlier because tempnb, if hosted, already does the example notebooks.
Yeah. I think
Location.
I think I agree 100% with that. That I think we should. I think this is going down a path that's just going to introduce pain. Namely, we don't want people to have to create Docker files for every repo that has notebooks that people might want to work with.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think we just close.
Yep, I think close that one.
Okay, I'll remove the decision. I'll remove the needs review.
I closed it.
All right, great.
Context manager. So someone wrote a context manager for temporarily switching. It's basically a context manager for Magic Map.
Okay, and what is the
The decision is kind of where to put it, what to call it. You know, naming things, right? Naming things and APIs. So they put use backend in core.pylab tools. And I don't really view core.pylab tools as containing any public APIs at all.
Where did we put all that matplotlib public API stuff?
I think it's just in display.
Yeah, I think you're right. So why wouldn't, I mean, it seems like this would be just a matplotlib.
So there's a difference in that when you switch backends with IPython, you need to do the GUI hookup stuff as well.
Mm.
Although I should say, I'm not actually sure that's going to work. I don't know what would happen if you switch to Qt and then switch back to inline at the end of the cell so that the kernel would not be integrating the Qt event loop.
Well, yeah, no, I think the switching in our model sort of happens like, yeah, it requires registering all the right hooks.
Well, it's really only one hook for in most cases. It's just the event loop hook. The inline backend has a flush, our own, because the inline backend is our backend, so we have our own implementation of drawf interactive, basically. But for all other backends, it's just the event loop.
Yeah, I mean, I do think if we want this in IPython, we should create a new min. You suggested a new IPython MPL util or package and move the stuff that's in display over to that, so there's a central place for doing the matplotlib related public API things.
Now, I am worried about whether this works at all because of the comment Min just made. If the context manager on exit basically disables that, I mean, the part of the point of the way we switch between, and we allow switching out to GUI backends and back to inline, is that it's completely stateful. You switch, you type matplotlib qt, and then you're now doing plots with qt, and you type matplotlib inline, and you're back inline. But at any given point in time, there's only one of them active after you've executed a cell of code. And the difference with a context manager is that it does the switching on enter and exit during the code execution, but if it restores things back when the execution is done, it's kind of this fleeting, it's as if you had typed %matplotlib qt at the top of a cell and %matplotlib inline at the bottom of a cell. For all intents and purposes, it's doing that.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is literally exactly what it does, because that's what context managers do.
Well, and the problem is plotting doesn't happen immediately. It happens in a post-execute hook that happens after the cell is run. That's when the back end is called to make the plot.
In the inline case only.
Yeah, because in the inline case is the one that we're trying to trap the figures and render them themselves in a delayed mode and do it, we do it and all that.
But if someone's switching between the back ends and one of them is the inline back end, it will have that problem.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. It's the point exactly that Min raised.
There's stuff to think about, and in terms of implementation, or in terms of whether it actually works or not. And then, if we do want it, we should create a IPython.mpl util or something.
Yeah, I think there is integration that obviously belongs to us. I would say if we do that, we should expose the old import points should continue to work for a while. We can move the code around. Just leave the old ones as deprecated.
As far as I'm concerned, there are no public APIs in core.pylab-tools. There are a couple functions when things aren't working right that there are utilities like print figure that are occasionally useful to people.
Well, but there is the stuff in display.
Oh yeah, moving set matplotlib formats from display to end. So yeah, that can.
Well, and even things like that print figure. I mean, people use that stuff, and it's a small amount of pain for us to leave that entry point available so that we don't gratuitously break people's code.
That's why I don't. I wouldn't add any public APIs to this because we don't randomly rename Pylab tools because that would break things that people technically might be doing. But there are no public APIs in there.
Correct.
And I don't want to add new public functionality in there because currently there's none.
Yeah.
Yep. Just because there's no public API doesn't mean nobody uses it.
Yep.
But
we shouldn't encourage any more of that. So yeah.
Okay. So the summary. Let me just write this down.
But the big question is, does this work? Does this work reliably?
Yeah, that's something to do in review, not now.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not sure this works reliable. Need to review that. We decided that we are +1 on creating separate public API module for MPL related things. Okay. Okay. And so this becomes just needs review?
Yep.
I've got that. And taking needs decision off, and we're moving on.
Okay, next one is Docker files to track master.
Okay.
I think the main question is, does this belong in the IPython repo or in another repo? right? Because
the reason I would like it in the IPython repo is that Docker Hub will track master automatically.
so when we push IPython, the Docker build will be
The
updated.
Docker build will automatically trigger for us. No interaction from us.
And where are we deploying that Docker file?
Nowhere.
No, nowhere. It's just an image that would be, well, it would be up on hub.docker.com/IPython or whatever.
Okay. So we're not using this image for tempnb.
I'd like to use it for tempnb.
I think because of that, because of the fact that it does track automatically, I didn't realize that Docker Hub would do the builds automatically. I would say this would be a good one to have because it will encourage people who are experimenting with containerized deployments to be able. We know that stuff is really relying on master because that's where we're doing all the work for that kind of thing, and this will lower the barrier for that to be a lot easier to do, which means we will get better feedback from people on whether what we're doing works or not.
There is one thing that needs to change right now.
Okay.
Not in the Docker file, but so they'll clone the whole repository and set the submodules up. But then our submodule detection stuff, at least if you try to do the pip install dot, it tries to treat it like it has to be able to reach Git. It isn't able to reach Git, and so it borks out. And I don't know what I need to monkey patch around.
Okay, so the machine that.
Hold on just a second. Hey, sweetie. Come back out with Nami, please.
All right. Okay, yeah, so I suspect it's something weird where Git isn't available on the VM.
Yep.
Yeah.
That VM may be network isolated,
I
or
mean,
either not have Git installed or be network isolated.
Yeah. So I think right now when we do our checking, we see, is this a Git repo, and if so, assume Git's available. I suspect that's the logic that's running. So I can easily check. Check is there Git, in addition to is it a Git repo.
But Kyle, do you is Kyle still?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Okay.
Sorry.
No worries. Kyle, do you know whether the problem is the Git command failing because the VM doesn't have Git, or is Git not reaching GitHub because it's isolated from the network when the build is being made?
It doesn't do a remote operation.
Yeah, like I could make it do a clone instead, but I try to do add dot, and I think when it adds the sources in, it's not.
Oh, if you did add dot and excluded the .git directory, I think it would work correctly. But I think I can fix this in the submodule check.
Well, yeah,
Okay.
no, that's just something for review. It sounds like the decision, though, is that we're +1 on this.
Yeah, I think so.
And like the Docker file, the way it is right now, is completely minimal the way I want it. So.
Okay, great. Then that's that. And proof of concept for locking cells via metadata by Jess.
Jess, are you here? Nope.
Yeah, so the main thing here was, we talked about this on Thursday, was this is the kind of thing that makes sense to develop as an extension and then merge into master once people figure out how it should work.
Yeah.
But the disadvantage of that is that with an extension that's supposed to prevent users from doing stuff, is it won't do anything if the users don't have the extension.
Yeah.
So it's harder to test functionality like this in an extension because you need to make sure all your users have the same extension.
Well, and actually, so it looks like this one doesn't make a cell uneditable. It makes it unmovable. Is that a good?
It makes it you can't delete it, I think. And this is part of why it makes sense to be an extension, because there's a lot of variations on what is the logical thing to do.
Yeah.
And so Jess's goal here is that she wants people to edit it, but it's marked with cell metadata for like this is the cell to grade. So it starts out as a skeleton, and the student fills it out, and then it relies on that metadata to do the grading, to find the cell to grade. And So that only works if the cell is editable. And the problem is you don't want to delete that cell, because if you delete it and then re-add it, you might lose the metadata.
Yeah.
So he only wants to prevent delete.
Okay, only prevent delete. So you can still move it.
Yeah, and she, in fact, I think the latest decision in that PR, I don't remember if she implemented, she was busy on Thursday. She said she was going to try to do it on Friday or the weekend, was to add the metadata, cell metadata undeletable. Or not, sorry, cell.metadata.deletable false was the control that she's adding.
And how do you set that? Does this PR introduce the UI for that, or just the logic?
Just the logic.
I think that for these things that are going to be used in a teaching context, I think it makes sense, at least until things settle a little bit more and we understand the patterns better, to suggest that people use them with a custom profile, and that teachers basically tell their students when they run the notebook for the class, they have to use this profile, -- profile X for that class. And that profile has the extensions locally installed inside the profile, and any other customizations that the teacher wants, which can include things like updates to those, and he or she can tell the students, go and type git pull and update the extensions.
Wait, did you just say students going and doing git pull?
Well, if they have it installed locally, or just nuke that folder and click. I mean, you can also give them a zip link from GitHub.
You can't install from zips on GitHub.
I mean, I think, as Jess and I developed the grading and the teaching stuff, our assumption is that people have no installation. Like Anaconda is the absolute maximal installation task you can give to a student, and that's pushing it. And so I don't think we want to. Like, I don't think it's feasible to say, students, you need to install this IPython extension. I truly don't. But I think the way I'm thinking about this is that I'm hoping that we can build teaching infrastructure that actually works without doing these types of things. In other words, like, we need to make grading work even if they delete a cell and add it back. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if that's possible. This one is a tough situation, and because we're basically tagging cells that have tests.
Yep.
And then we are running those cells and making sure the output comes back empty, that the tests pass. Mm-hmm. If a student deletes that cell, even if they put the content back, you stop grading it.
Yeah, because the tag isn't there anymore.
And so, but I also think it's I don't know. This is a really tough.
I mean, because if you don't want any installation whatsoever, even Conda isn't going to work, because they're going to have 2.2. They're not going to have master, right? So if you rely on, if the assumption is it has to work with 2.2, yes, then the answer is no. and the assumption also can't be every one of these ideas we have to merge it into master and release it officially just to test if it's a good idea or not. I mean, that's obviously
the one thing that I'm playing around with is possibly putting up a bin star package for master, and so people could easily get
but just as easily you could put up a bin star package for extensions.
Yeah,
you could have a bin star package that is this course that actually has everything.
Yeah, because Brian, what we don't want to get into is a situation where we're basically putting stuff into master that we're not even sure is going to work, or that it's too experimental.
Oh, no, absolutely.
Just to make an end run.
Yeah. No, absolutely. There's no question. No, and so I'm.
Okay, so then here's just a question: do we want the notion of, so all this PR does is add the interpretation of the deletable metadata. It doesn't add anything for how to set it, anything. Like, if you look at the PR, it's like 8 lines. It's actually, it needs a tweak.
I would say this is an extension, honestly. I would really say, and an extension that can carry also the little authoring tool for the, if Jess and Brian are going to use this, obviously they're going to want something a little bit, okay, bye Matthias. They're going to want something a little bit better than editing the raw metadata all the time. What's that?
I said, I think you mean by Dr. Matthias.
Yes, Dr. Buissonnier, goodbye.
I mean, but that, so the only person, like in the teaching model, the only person who would have to set this metadata field is the instructor.
Yeah.
And we do have an instructor-focused cell toolbar.
Okay.
And that's fine. I mean, we'll install that, but I just don't want the students to have to install that.
Okay.
Yeah, so what this PR actually does is super generic. If cell metadata deletable is defined as false, prevent delete from happening. That's literally the only thing that this does.
Yeah,
is that generic enough that we want to support it?
I actually started out in Fernando's camp on this, but I think it's so generic and it's so simple, and it doesn't try to solve the UI problem.
Yeah.
Probably 70-30 for this.
But one thing though is that this would be the first time. I think this would be the first sort of official metadata field that we would. Do we have anything else in the metadata that we have official logic for?
Yes, collapsed.
Yeah,
what's
collapsed tags. Well, collapsed will be in the metadata in NB format v4.
Okay.
Not in metadata in v3.
One thing that I would want then would be that if this goes in, and if this doesn't, and if we don't have what I'm about to ask for, we should have it soon, is basically a registry of what are the official fields that we consider to be fields that we have effectively registered. A register, and this has to be very public, very easy.
There's an IPEP for that, but we can move it to
NB format
to somewhere. Well, I wouldn't put it in the v4. I guess we could. I would.
Oh, but more importantly, it should be in the official, basically, development docs, which is sort of.
So the NB format PR adds an NB format equivalent of the message spec doc. So the notebook format is fully specified in a Sphinx document.
And a little, but
adding a metadata.
But a little, I'm thinking about like a nice little, very visible table of these are the keywords, these are the fields that the project has officially reserved for itself, and that the project assigns actual behavior to. And it says what is the key, what are the possible values, and what is the behavior that we implement, because these become off limits for everyone else. And these become things that if somebody implements an alternate client or whatever, we expect them to honor in various ways.
Well, and I think the other thing we'll eventually need is possibly input collapsed. Like, we'll need to know, is the input collapsed, is the output collapsed?
Exactly.
Are widgets collapsed? And I absolutely agree, we need to document that.
The official ones, I think it's okay if we start. I think we have by now enough. A deep enough view of the project that we're starting to know, okay, these are the things that keep coming up over and over. These are the ones that we probably want to make official. But every time we make that decision, it has to be very, very explicitly conveyed. And yeah, no, I'm not totally opposed to, as long as the UI for the instructors can live somewhere else. I'm not opposed to.
Yeah, the UI is in an extension that only the instructors install.
Yeah, okay.
I'm
not opposed to that.
Okay.
I'm not opposed to that, but I definitely would want this. If this goes in, it has to go in with the proper docs as well, because this is one.
I would actually put the docs in the NB format for PR.
Fine, or synchronize those two, whatever. But basically, if this field becomes official, it better be very visibly documented somewhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'll add that to the MB format.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, so we decided we are +1 on this, need to document all official metadata that we support in %min, oops, hold on. Min-rk will add this to the NP. Do you know the PR number on that one? It doesn't really matter.
Yes, PR is 6488. Oh, you mean my PR? I don't know. So that's a small number by now.
There it is.
4 or something.
6045. Okay. And does this need any further review?
It needs some. It doesn't need any more. Well, just there's some. So we inverted the name. So it went from something locked to deletable.
Yep.
So the logic needs to be inverted. So she needs to switch some trues to falses before merging it.
Okay. So it's marked as waiting for author.
Yeah.
Needs a few more changes. Logic.
Yep.
Great.
Cool. Right. That's been our half hour. Do we want to?
Yeah, we should stop. I think we should try to keep it. And also, Matthias had to leave, and his is the last one. So let's have another one of these once we get 3 or more requests.
Okay.
And,
Alrighty. Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye.